All right. Welcome and good evening or good afternoon. It's not quite the evening yet. We have special timing of this meeting and to the regular meeting of council for August 8th, 2022. So we're going to do O Canada, a moment of reflection, and then we're going to look to the Deputy Mayor Sorrento to lead the land acknowledgement, and then we'll go into the Mayor's report. So turn it over to the clerk or the council coordinator for O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true
Okay, welcome back. Sorry for a bit of the delay, and we're heading right into the next portion of the agenda, which is turning it to the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sorrento, for the reading of the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The land on which Council meets today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. The territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this is a reminder that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you very much for that. So I just got a brief mayor's report, and we're going to start just by acknowledging Kristen Kitt, Olympic gold medalist with the heavy eight for the women's rowing in Tokyo, has received the key to the city, and this is bestowed upon those whose significant contributions have reflected positively in our community. Kristen's been rowing since 2003 at Sir Winston Churchill School, and her formative years on Martindale Pond really did have an impact on her, as after that she became one of the leading coxswains in the country, and crew after crew she has amassed a number of medals, including an international competition. In 2016, she received the bronze as a coxswain for the Paralympic Games, and in 2021, she steered the Canadian women's 8 to a gold medal. She continuously brings an enormous amount of pride to our community. She is very supportive of St. Catharines. This is her hometown where she was born and raised, and we were proud to provide her with the key to the city as part of our recognition for those who are doing amazing things both here in St. Catharines and abroad. So we wish her all the success, and she is heading back out for national training, and then they will be going to the Worlds in the Czech Republic in the fall. So her traveling schedule is quite tight, and it was wonderful to see her lighting the torch at the Olympics, at the Canada Summer Games. She lit the ceremonial torch there, and it was beautiful to see her as the final person during that long journey that started back in Ottawa, coming into the Meridian Centre and lighting the cauldron for the opening of the Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games. And speaking of that, what an outstanding performance it was at the Meridian Centre, one of the best openings I've ever seen, and it was such a proud moment to be there and see all of the young athletes coming into the arena and seeing the performances, an amazing display of our Indigenous culture, of the inclusivity of sport, of the community, the reflection of our community, and just seeing so many members of our Niagara region coming together at the opening of what is going to be an amazing Summer Games here in Niagara. So I just want to give a thanks to all of the people who made this a reality. There will be many more opportunities where we'll be able to give thanks to them, but to the volunteers who have come out, to the organizers, the board members, Doug Hamilton, the chair, Barry Wright, the CEO, they have all done an amazing job bringing this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to our community. Had an opportunity to go to the women's lacrosse for the very first time. Women's lacrosse is in the games ever, and to see the first goal scored by Saskatchewan was, again, a wonderful achievement. Seeing the Creators game being played here at Canada Games Park was so important. We also have basketball at the Meridian Centre. We have cycling at Brock. We have on the 12 Mile Creek, the mountain bike racing that is now taking place. They had their first races here today. And I want to thank the Niagara Trail Maintenance Association and the city staff for really working on that course, and going to be able to see the first medals coming off of the mountain biking course on Wednesday. So anybody who wants to see some amazing young athletes riding a very difficult course, head on down to the mountain biking course on the 12 Mile Creek over off Lockhart Drive, as well as rowing will be taking place next week. And so there's a lot of games to check out, and you can go to the Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games website. It has a listing daily of all the different sports. They're in so many different communities across the country. You're going to be hearing from our city staff in the upcoming minutes, probably in the next 10-15 minutes, about the 13 for 13 event that's taking place here in St. Catharines. partnering with Yukon. So I'm not going to steal any of the thunder there, but that's going to be a great free event as well. And there's a lot of free events. The Niagara Place over at the Canada Games Park, free events there every day, music on the stages, a lot of opportunities for your families to get involved and enjoy and really experience the Canada Games. So I hope to see a lot of people out there. Get your tickets early for the medal games because those are going quick. And other than that, really enjoy yourselves because this is, again, once in a lifetime opportunity. They are still looking for volunteers. So if you're interested in being a volunteer, people who want to be volunteers, you can go to the Meridian Credit Union volunteer booth at the Penn Center and they'll sign you up immediately. So you'll go through the process. If you arrive in person, you'll go through the process and you can be, again, a member, an important piece of the games, which is the volunteers. Also want to congratulate the Henley Regatta for its 138th rowing regatta here in Niagara and Port Dalhousie. And it was great to welcome back the crews to St. Catharines. And also a thank you to all the volunteers that made that event such a popular success as well. Last week, the city opened the doors for the Rex Timers Arena to the community to see the restoration of the totem pole from Richard Pierpoint Park. The 40-foot totem pole originally installed for Canada's centennial is looking amazing thanks to the efforts of Bruce Alfred, who studied under Doug Kramer, the original artist for the totem pole, as well as fellow Indigenous artists Cole Speck and Dominique Wells. It's just to see that up close was such a beautiful thing to see, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to have further dialogue about the future of the totem pole here in our community. Doors Open St. Catharines is on Saturday, August 20th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And there's a number of different places across our city that are going to have their doors wide open for the community to come through, including Salem Chapel, which is the BME Church, Lake Street Armory, first opportunity for the Lake Street Armory to have its open doors, which is great. Maryland I. Walker School of Fine and Performing Arts, the First Ontario Performing Arts Center, and of course the Meridian Center, all will have their doors open for the community to come in and learn more about the different spaces in our community. And last but not least, the City of St. Catharines is sending a delegation of councillors and city staff to AMO, which is the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which is the August 14th to the 17th in the City of Ottawa. It's the first time in two years that AMO will be in person, and it's also an opportunity to meet with provincial ministers and senior staff after the last provincial election. We do have a number of councillors that will be attending from our community, including Councillor Dodge, who is on the board of AMO, and there's a number of issues that we will be addressing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to CAO Oakes. He's going to talk briefly about some of the issues around homelessness in the community and how AMO provides the opportunity for us to advocate for more resources.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's, I guess, the last several weeks we've noticed the encampments are becoming more prevalent in and around the downtown, and some of the issues that our staff are dealing with in consultation with our partners at the region, Niagara Regional Police Service, NASO, and other agencies, trying to get a handle on the crisis that we're in. It's not necessarily just a homeless crisis, it's actually a health crisis, and what we're noticing, the complexity of the issues that are facing the community is one of drug, opioid, and mental health and addictions that are causing a lot of the concerns. So over the last several weeks, we've been working as best we can with all of the partners. The shelter system is essentially at capacity because of, we're back into normal business operations. A lot of the other type of shelter space is no longer available to the system. So we've been trying everything we can to find suitable accommodations for the individuals who are currently in the encampments. This is something that we need them to be able to move into the shelter space and out of the parks and out of the tents because of the heat, the issue that we're finding with ticks and some of the other elements, and we're trying to do everything we can to deal with that. And as part of that work program that we're doing, and we have calls every week with all of the partners, is trying to manage this as best we can, work within the system. It's not always what the community wants to see. It's not always what the expectations of the residents are, but we're doing everything we can to try to deal with the issue. And Part of that process, while it is more of a medium to long term, is going to AMO, and we have a delegation, and we're actually going to have our regional counterparts on the delegation with us to highlight some of the needs. And the one specific element that seems to be missing right now is the acute supportive housing for specific, very difficult to house individuals, whether it's a mental health issue or an addiction. There is not the support system that we need right now, and that's what we're starting to see within the communities, and those are some of the issues that we're facing. So for the residents who are frustrated that it appears nothing is being done, there is a lot being done, both in the background, but also with all of the partner agencies. So we're doing everything we can to move that forward. So we just continue to ask for patience for all. But we will, and we have been identifying this as a significant issue for us to be able to move forward with, not only as a city, but as a region, and in particular, the province and the federal government also need to be a part of the solution. So that's really, the specifics of what I wanted to highlight tonight. I will be providing a more detailed brief to council over the next week, but I did want to have an opportunity to provide you with that. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Say Oaks. All right, with that, we'll go into the agenda, and I'll look to the clerk for any additions or amendments to the current agenda.
The following amendments are being requested for tonight's agenda. Item 9.2, the 2024 World Rowing Championship Report will be discussed prior to item 8.1. The second item is that Councillor Kushner has advised that he'll be requesting that council waive the rules to consider a motion not appearing on the agenda. The motion is to appeal a Committee of Adjustment decision for 234A and 234B Vansickle Road. The motion to waive the rules will be discussed after the adoption of the agenda. If this procedural step passes, then the motion will be discussed later in the meeting under the motion section. And the third item is that Councillor Miller has advised that he would like to bring forward a motion that's directly related to bylaw B from the bylaw list. The motion would be to waive the fees for parking permits issued for Herrick Avenue, and that's the area that's specifically identified in bylaw B. This would be discussed later under the reading of the bylaws.
All right, thank you. Any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, see no hands up. Need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Littleton, seconded by Councillor Porter. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And now we head into, turn it back over to the clerk for the appeal.
So Councillor Kushner has provided notice that he would like council to consider a motion not appearing on the agenda. This is regarding an appeal of a Committee of Adjustment decision for 234A and 234B Vansickle Road. Per Council's Procedure Bylaw, Section M6.4, motions not appearing on the agenda can only be considered if Council votes unanimously in favor of considering the motion. So the procedural steps are first to suspend the rules. In order for Councillor Kushner to bring forward the motion, Council must vote in favor of suspending the rules. A unanimous vote is required. And then if the motion to suspend rules passes, the second step would be to actually consider the motion, and we would do that under the motion section of the agenda.
Okay, so this motion currently is just to suspend the rules. The only question that I'll ask is staff prepared to speak to the motion tonight? And that's to the CAO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, staff has been in conversation with Councillor Kushner, and they're able to speak to it if the rules are waived.
Okay, so staff will be prepared to speak to it. So I'll look to the clerk for clarification. Is this debatable or simply for a vote?
Suspending the rules is not debatable. You could ask some questions about why the rules need to be suspended. My understanding in this situation is it is time sensitive, as there's an appeal period which will lapse before council's next meeting.
So that's why it has to be suspended. Okay, so I'll look to the clerk to call a question. Motion to suspend the rules made by Councillor Kushner, seconded by Councillor Phillips.
That should be Councillor Harris, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Christmas? Who? Councillor
Mayor Chris, Councillor Harris.
Oh, Harris, sorry.
I'll give up my second to Councillor Harris.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Counselor Phillips,
Yes.
Counselor Sorrento,
No.
Counselor Dodge,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Littleton,
Can I ask a question? Are we allowed to know what this is about?
This is just the waiving of the rules, and so the issue is staff are prepared to speak to it. As the clerk had indicated, it is time sensitive, so if we waive the rules, we do have staff that are prepared to speak to it, at which point during the motion part, you'll be able to know more about it.
Yes.
Counselor McPherson,
Yes.
Counselor Miller, Counselor Porter,
Yes.
Counselor Williamson,
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik,
Yes.
and that's lost.
Okay, so that is lost because it needed to be unanimous?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Is there any other method of bringing this back now? Since some people might not have understood what we were actually trying to do and just decide to vote no?
So we're not going to speak to it right now, Councillor Harris. That'll be under other business.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So we now go to adoption of the minutes. We have the council meeting held on July 18th. I need a mover and a seconder for the minutes. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Williamson. And any changes to or edits to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. And now any conflicts of interest? We do have one. Councillor Littleton?
Thank you. I sent instructions already to the clerk's office. It's the one about the vital
6.10.
services. Thank you.
Okay. And then motion for the consent agenda. So going to look to the clerk as to the items that have been pulled from consent, and then we'll do the consent agenda.
3 items have been pulled from consent. Item 6.6 is the policy for appointing elected officials and recommending elected officials for appointment. Item 6.7, street naming policy. And item 6.3, proposal to declare land surplus at 2A Hainer Street, Realty file 14.159.
Okay, anything else being pulled off the council agenda? Not seeing any. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Littleton. And I'll turn it over to the clerk for the roll call.
So today's consent agenda includes item 6.1, CRCS indoor tennis. Item 6.2, economic development and government relations municipal accommodation tax. Item 6.4, financial management services, community benefits charges affordable housing grant program. Item 6.5, financial management services, 2023 tax due dates and interim billing bylaw. Item 6.8, planning and building services, memorandum of understanding between the city and the region and the city and the development proponents in relationship to the Ontario Street Corridor Secondary Plan Study. 6.9, planning and building services annual report on revenue, expenses, and permit stabilization reserve fund for 2021. 6.10, planning and building service and creation of a vital services bylaw and related administrative penalties. That approval of this report will set the public meeting for the next meeting of August 29th. And item 6.11, legal and clerk services, council correspondence.
Okay. Mover and a seconder. Did I already do that? Yes, I did. Over to you.
Councillor McPherson,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Miller, Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so we have a couple presentations that are going to take place today. So council chambers in all municipalities in our country represent the seat of local democracy, the many acts that govern us, understand the necessity of the collective voice when decisions are being made, to grow our spaces and pass our bylaws and seek opinions into very complex issues. We recognize the right of the majority to decide, the minority to be heard, and the public to have an opportunity to participate, and all participants to be treated with courtesy and respect. It is imperative that elected officials, citizens, and staff have input, and it is paramount that we listen to one another and question one another, but we understand that we do this in a way that never undermines any person's abilities or dignity in the chamber. So our first presentation is going to be on the economic development and government relations related to the 2024 World Rowing Championships, infrastructure, and community accessibility improvements. We have two individuals who will be presenting on this. We have Mr. Bill Shank and Mr. Doug Hamilton. So Bill Shank is the chair, St. Catharines World Rowing Committee, and Doug Hamilton is a board member as well. And I want to welcome both here. And the reason why they're first high up the agenda is because I know the chair of the Canada Games, Doug Hamilton, is also busy with a number of other events here tonight. And with the rowing just finishing in the Henley Regatta, I know that Mr. Shank is trying to catch up on a whole bunch of other things. So they're going to be presenting about the upcoming World Rowing Championships in 2024 and giving us some further detail as council as to what we can expect moving forward. So I'll turn it over to both those individuals as well. If there's any questions, Economic Development Director York is here as well.
So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for allowing us to move up on the agenda. And so I'm very pleased tonight to be joined by Mr. Doug Hamilton, and I know Doug's very, very busy, so I'm very happy to have him part of this presentation tonight. So before I begin, I'd just like to comment about some of the things we're talking about that came up earlier in tonight's meeting. And I'd like to thank the city for their involvement with this past Henley Regatta. It was a little bit of a rusty start to begin with, but I think by the end we got it right. And the comments that are coming back out of the community that were there, that it was very much received and well enjoyed. The new Neil Campbell Training Center, which was the part of the Canada Summer Games legacy that was left behind, was partially used for the event, and it was very well received. A lot of positive comments about going forward and how it will be used. Because of the heat this week, the shaded areas were used quite extensively, and so very happy about that. The other part of what took place was the City of St. Catharines undertook the redoing of Henley Island Drive from Main Street to the bridge and included a new walking path. And so for safety accessibility, as it was well used during the event, and we received many good comments about the signage, the new speed bumps along the roadway, and the access for accessible and as well as people to walk along for a safety issue. So again, just some of the improvements that have been taking place leading up to the 2024 World Championships as well as the Canada Summer Games. As some of you remember, it was not so long ago that the mayor joined me as we were bidding to host the World Championships here in St. Catharines, which we were very successful in doing. And now it's time to move forward and come up with where we're at and where we're going. And so we have been working. And so in August 2024, the City of St. Catharines, in partnership with St. Catharines World Rowing Canada Avion, will be welcoming approximately 2,000 athletes from around the world to compete in the World Rowing Championships. This is the largest rowing event that's held by World Rowing. It includes the juniors, the under-23s, and the non-Olympic events. And so this will be the third time that the Henley Rowing Course will be welcoming the world back to St. Catharines. And the two previous times were 1970 and 1999. So it's time that we are back hosting. And the comments that I've been hearing as I've been to other events and has been that everyone's looking forward to coming back to St. Catharines, whether they were here for previous events, the university games, or whether it was they were an athlete here in 1999, and now they're on to the management side. Some of the officials that were here are looking at using this as a retirement, and they're very excited to be coming back to North America. And so we just had a group that went over to the under-23s, and they came back with the same positive feelings about the excitement about coming back here. The Henley Rowing Course has served as a national and international centerpiece for rowing for more than 100 years. And after more than a century of use, most of the facilities being developed decades ago, some are in need of dire upgrades. Importantly, the improvements are critical not only for the hosting of 24, but the continued viability of the Henley to host future national and international events, while continuing to support the growth of rowing as a sport in Ontario and Canada. We have listed some infrastructure community accessible improvements have been identified, and so the accessibility improvements to the finish tower, accessibility improvements to the grandstand, accessibility improvements in the boathouse area, reinforcement of pylons along the rowing course, a new start alignment system, replacement of the dam at the end of the rowing course, and new community accessibility connections. The finish tower on Henley Rowing Course was built in 1970 to host the first World Championships held on the Henley Rowing Course. The finish tower is the heart of any racing program, is home to the finish judges and the timing system. And after more than 50 years, the finish tower requires significant improvements so that it can continue as the heart of the 2024 World Championships and other racing programs along the Henley course. And I'm sure many of you can imagine back in 1970, the technology that was available then to what we are doing now with live streaming and everything that goes around trying to host this event, and the timing and the systems that are used are much more extensive when we use stopwatch and a shotgun for the finish line. The grandstand on the Henley course was built in 1931, has not received any significant upgrades since then. Minor improvements were done for the Worlds in 1999. But as we move forward, improvements to the grandstand include more accessibility and other significant upgrades to the seating, washrooms, access areas, the roof structure, lighting and safety, security and sound systems need to be updated and improved. Unlike the previous 3 World Rowing Championships hosted on the Henley Rowing Course, the 2024 event will include para-rowing events. These para-rowing events are open to athletes with restricted trunk, leg, or arm functions who have vision impairment. Improvements are required in the boathouse area and the Henley Rowing Course to ensure that the area is fully accessible to the para-rowers competing now and in the future. Most of the boathouse area was constructed in preparation of the 1970 World Championships. The boathouse change rooms are not accessible and in dire need of an upgrade. The boathouse tarmac access pathways are not paved, and the paved parking lot requires resurfacing, along with installed improved signage for athletes for the vision impaired. There are large steel pylons that have been constructed along the boundaries of the Henley Rowing Course. There's 2 of them at each 500 meters along the 2,000 meter course. These pylons were constructed in 1966 and anchored the Albano system for the rowing course. The Albano system is what holds the buoys that mark the lanes in place. And over the course of winter, I think it was about 4 years ago now, the ice took out one of these pylons. And so since these were constructed over 50 years ago, these pylons have withstood pressures from many ice formations, but the one didn't make it a few years ago. So to address the ongoing risk of another collapse, there's a need to reinforce and strengthen the existing pylons. The World Rowing Federation now requires installation of an automatic alignment system for the start of the rowing competition. If you watch the Olympics, you'll see the little orange clogs that come up out of the water and that hold the boats in place. And so now it is now becoming mandatory for rowing competitions. Martindale Pond and the Henley Rowing Course were formed in the 1800s during the development of the first Welland Canal, and its water level is controlled through a series of dams aimed at maintaining the course current and complete level of while generating revenue through a Haywood generating station. One of those dams, the Martindale Weir, was constructed many decades ago and is at the end of the Henley Rowing Course is in need of replacement. Hence the plan to leverage the funds of the Weir replacement as the city's contribution towards completion of the proposed community connections and infrastructure improvements. The community surrounding the Henley course has grown dramatically since the course was first developed over a century ago. Together we envision hosting the World Rowing Championships as an opportunity to better connect the surrounding and growing community to this wonderful water course, though they can even be enjoyed by all. And if we remember just a short time ago, when we did have the World Championships, we created the extension on Rennie Park, and a bridge was developed connecting JC Park to Rennie Extension. And that walkway is being very well received by the people in the Port Dalhousie area. A key focus in the community connection is on activity, transportation, and creation of accessible pathways for community use and recreation to enhance access and to use of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail through St. Catharines. Proposed improvements include accessible boardwalk connecting the core of Port Dalhousie to the grandstand, a pedestrian bridge access to Henley Island from the grandstand, and new accessible stairway at Simcoe Street to Rennie Park. The public pathway extensions are on Henley Island, all making it a complete connection community. And so I'd ask Doug Hamilton, as I went through most of the presentation, to fill in any blanks that I might have missed along the way.
So thank you very much, Bill. So, I mean, as all of council already knows, when you host a World Championships or a major multi-sport games, it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's an opportunity to use those games or a World Championships as a catalyst to leverage upper level government funding, to also leverage private funding to do major improvements and upgrades over time that are necessary to any facility like this, particularly this facility, which is really a jewel in the world of rowing. And all of the major championships that have been hosted there over the last 50 plus years, including the 1970 World Rowing Championships when the finish tower was completed and there were a number of things done to Henley Island. As Bill mentioned, 1999 when there were some improvements made, including dredging the course. The Pan Am Games in 2015 when the new bridge was put in, and now the Canada Games when we built the new Neil Campbell Rowing Center were all successfully used as really that opportunity to leverage additional funding. And so what Bill's proposing here is a furthering of that. Again, using the 2024 Worlds as an opportunity to leverage additional funding for a number of improvements which are necessary. And it's an excellent proposal in my view, and one that is very appropriate and timely.
Okay, I'm going to turn over to Director York just in terms of final sort of comments, and then we'll go to some questions.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to our presenters. So what you saw tonight is a partnership. It's a partnership in again taking advantage of an opportunity to host the World in St. Catharines, but also to renew investment in a facility that served us well for the last century, but now an opportunity to service the next century. And I will add, because I don't think we hit the mark on in the presentation, but it's certainly included in the staff report that we intend to be fully environmentally friendly when procuring and building any new facilities related to Henley and the surrounding community. Thank you.
Thank you, Director York, and thank you to both Bill and Doug for this very informative presentation. Councillor Garcia, get your hand up, and then we'll...
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Williamson had his up first.
I'll look to the clerk. I saw your name, your hand has gone up first. So.
Councillor Williamson's hand was up during the presentation. It was the first one I noticed.
Okay, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Bill and Doug. From the images that you've shared with us, this looks very interesting. The elevated walkway, I take it's on stilts, or it appears to be on stilts or piers, which I gather won't interfere with the engineered flow through the pond, which we know was designed to scour so that we didn't have the deposition problems that we had in the past, where it would things would silt up and would get shallower. Is it going to be similar to the walkway that connects JC Gardens Park and Rennie Island?
So yes, it has been included will be included into the design that when we did the modeling of the course, when we put the flow deflectors in the start, it was to take the flow down the course, and there was a current that came in from the backside of Martindale Pond that went in through the course. And so yes, when we did the design. That's why there is an outlet at the bottom of the course that runs out through the finish tower that helps direct those flows. So again, it will be a structure similar to what was on the other side. The difference this time, it will have a higher arch because there are many things that take place for rowing that we need to get under. And the current one that runs from JC Park to the Rennie Extension doesn't allow us to move some of the equipment that we use on the course. So yes, it will have to be made higher. It also will have to be made so that the span allows for rowing crews to go underneath, because the back area is used extensively for rowing as well. So that will all be incorporated into the design of what's being proposed.
So we're going to have the public benefit of having a connection all the way now from JC Gardens Park to the Rennie Park, to the grandstand, and then over to Henley Island. Is the intention for that to be accepting, I suppose, regattas open to the public?
That's the idea, that this would be accessible for the public. And so we would need to be restricting access during events. But again, everything hasn't been worked out on that. And so, the grandstand right now is closed off. It's not accessible only during rowing events. But we'll have to work out some details on how we make it accessible on a year-round basis for people to be able to walk and do all the connections. And so it's about connections and making things more community-friendly. And so the rowing community sometimes is looked at as elitist, and this is an opportunity that we're trying to connect more in the community and make it part of what we do in this area.
And there's going to be a little bit of a gap or space between the shoreline or the bottom of the bank and the walkway as it goes from the grandstand over to Henley Island. There's only like probably 3 or 4 private residents that would be affected in that section, it looks like, but it's going to be separated from the shoreline regardless.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So that you did mention the new pathway adjacent to Henley Island Drive. So the only kind of little bottleneck we're left with is at Henley Island Bridge. Is there a possibility we could cantilever off the existing bridge to create a pedestrian walkway along there, Bill?
So one of the things we identified after we went through the first process on that was going to be a bottleneck. And that was something that we were going to try and incorporate into the plan to make the continuation of the linkage. And so safety is an issue across the bridge for pedestrians. And so there is some signage up there now saying yield the right of way to pedestrians. But again, we're looking at the possibility of cantilevering off the side of the bridge to put an accessible walkway that continues the connections, and then it goes right up into Port Dalhousie. So yes, that's what we had talked about.
That's actually.
You'll see in the staff report on the 4th page that the 4th bullet from the top talks about the pedestrian bridge alongside the vehicle bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Now, it seems to me like you got a pretty ambitious time frame here. We're most of a good part way through 2022, and this is happening in 2024. You can pull it off?
It's an ambitious project, and so yes, we're a little late getting started. I know there has been a presentation made to the federal government, and so which was very well received. And so we hope that we can continue down this pathway and get things done in time. Again, if it doesn't get all done for 24, it's a concept that's being put in place that it's for future events as well. And so that we hope we can get done everything that's possible to get done before that. But again, it's a long-term plan that's being put in place, that's being suggested for the betterment of not only for the rowing groups, but for the community at large.
Thank you. Appreciate your answers, and I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Bill and Doug. An excellent plan. I think it will be fantastic if we get all that done, because it will position us for the next 50 years probably. I certainly hope the federal government and the provincial government will help us fund this, and I'm sure you will have the help of our MP and hopefully our MPPs as well. I just have 2 logistic questions. I'm a big supporter of what's proposed, but through you to staff, Mr. Mayor, first of all, the replacement of that weir from an engineering perspective, will that affect the operation of the Haywood station for very long while it's happening, or at all?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to Manager Carfignini. Do we have that answer, Paul? I think we're a little too early on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We do not have an answer to that, as we are looking to complete more detailed studies in order to understand the effects of that. So right now, we don't have that answer.
Okay, thank you. Being on the Hydro Board, I want to make sure that we liaise closely with them. My second question is about the Simcoe stairs down to Rennie Park, making them accessible, a great idea. Through you to staff, Mr. Mayor, I assume that that will require replacement of the existing steel stairs and perhaps some widening. So my question, both of those questions. Number one, will we be actually replacing those stairs or just repairing them? And number two, do we need more space? Because I know there is not a lot of space there, and I don't know if that's private property or not on either side.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've had a study done on those stairs, and those stairs are at the end of life. They have been repaired to facilitate further use until we have a detailed design put in place and approved funding in order to move forward with the replacement of those stairs.
Thank you. And Mr. Carfignini, and as I said, if some widening is required, we need to know whether there is enough space there, because I know there's not a lot of
Point of order, are the Simcoe Street stairs, do they have anything to do with the World Rowing?
Sorry, Councillor Garcia, the clarification is they are part of the overall plan for connectivity because it does connect to an upper level, which is Simcoe Street.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Phillips, and then Councillor Kushner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to the Martindale Pond Weir, this would be directed to staff, I guess. Is it imminent that it has to be replaced now? In the report, it indicates the only request for funding from the city would be to replace that weir, which is good. Does it have to be replaced like now, or is that years away?
C.A. Oaks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, through you, the weir needs to be replaced. It's actually in the capital forecast,
right.
And it's not in a year or two. It's in the next several years, but it does need to be dealt with. It's a significant issue that if it fails, there would be some significant ramifications on the entire city. So it's a priority for staff.
My point being with that is that you can pay me now or you can pay me later. Given what, if it's not replaced, we don't have this this important event. So, from the sounds of things, if that's our only contribution, we're going to have to do it anyway. So let's get it done. That's my opinion. Am I correct?
You are correct. It does have to be done, and it is the responsibility of the city. So these all work together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Kushner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questions have been asked there with respect to the timeline and with respect to the weir, but the improvements are certainly long overdue. They're very exciting, and they align extremely well with their strategic plan in terms of sports tourism and other objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess, to city staff. So the region has done a lot of consultation around Regional Road 87, and there are plans to add active transportation facilities down Lakeport through Main Street And I was struggling with this, but I'm so impressed with the idea of creating an active transportation network kind of off Main Street that goes over to Henley Island. I think this is a great idea. Has there been a reach out to the region about this? Because since they're already doing this planning work to make all of these active transportation connections, and I think that project's supposed to start in 2025. Do you think there's any opportunity to work with the region in terms of a partnership to make the active transportation? I think along Main Street, they decided not to have a bike lane and they were going to direct people to a side street. I actually think this bridge connection is much more preferable. It's amazing. Has anybody spoken to the region yet?
Dr. York?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we certainly intend to work alongside the region in this regard. And the first step here was putting in front of council to gain your support, but we will certainly work with the region on those improvements and include them in the overall pitch plan to other levels of government.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess my only thought is we've had lots of discussions with our Transportation Advisory Committee and our Accessibility Advisory Committee around accessible infrastructure and how to create active transportation networks and pedestrian networks that are actually accessible. So I hope that when we're constructing this, we are looking at this truly through an accessibility lens and we don't rehash the same kinds of arguments that we had on a recent active transportation project. That's my only final thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay, seeing no other further questions, I want to thank Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Shank for their presentation. Allow Doug to get back to his current day job, of which he's doing voluntarily, and no compensation except for the smiles on all the kids' faces that are coming into the Canada Games, and to Bill as well for their contribution here tonight. Looking forward to seeing this come forward. I need a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Williamson, and all in favor? And that's carried. So we're going to go right into the report, and the report is 8.1, I believe, and that's the one that supports this presentation. EDTS 131 2022 regarding the World Rowing Championships. And again, this is to receive for information. Councillor Sorrento is going to move it. Councillor McPherson is going to second it. And any further questions on this one? Okay, seeing none online either, we'll do a recorded vote.
Councillor Sorrento?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, now I'm going to go over to Julie Cholfi, and Economic Development Officer for the City of St. Catharines. Brief presentation on the 13 for 13 Golden Moments, focused on St. Catharines and the Yukon.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank you,
Director.
Mr. Mayor and Council. So we've just come off an outstanding weekend in St. Catharines celebrating the Niagara Canada Summer Games opening ceremonies at the Meridian Centre. And tonight I'm joined by my colleague Julia Cholfi, who will share some details and plans around our upcoming 13 for 13 festival in partnership with our province, the Yukon. Julia?
Thank you, Brian. Good evening, Mayor Senzik, councillors, staff, and members of the public. Our economic development team wanted to take a few short minutes of your time this evening to highlight some of the information around the Golden Moments celebrating St. Catharines and the Yukon event, which is taking place this Thursday, August 11th in downtown St. Catharines. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The 13 for 13 Cultural Festival will see each of Niagara's 12 municipalities and the region partnered up and collaborating with one of Canada's 13 provinces or territories. These events will showcase the unique cultural heritage, entertainment, art, and culinary experiences of each pairing during each assigned night. The 13 for 13 Cultural Festival will rotate daily during the 2022 Canada Games, shifting from one municipality to another, and will be complimentary to all who attend. Visitors to the festivals will be afforded the opportunity to experience the cultures of each province and territory, while also traveling across Canada without leaving Niagara. In St. Catharines, we have been partnered with the Yukon to present Golden Moments celebrating St. Catharines and the Yukon. This event is taking place on Thursday, August 11th from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. St. Paul Street will be closed from James to Carlisle, with activations along the roadway, as well as inside the host venue, which is the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. And again, admission is free for the public and anyone who decides they want to attend the event. The activations and partners as part of this event will be all throughout downtown. At 201 St. Paul, this will be the family zone. We will see the Betty Lou photo booth, RBC, Niagara College, Bell Media with live to air on 105.7 from 2 to 7 p.m., as well as activities for families including a caricaturist, a face painter, crafts, and games. Along St. Paul Street, activations from Niagara 2022, the Pin People, Regatta Sport, Desjardins, and Parasport Ontario will be in place. We will also have a Black-owned 905 vendor market, which will showcase local BIPOC artisans and will engage visitors, leading everybody to the main stage, which will be located directly in front of the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. Inside the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre, attendees can experience a Northern Lights immersive display. The film house will be showcasing short films of St. Catharines and the Yukon. As well, we will have a public art display and postcards from the St. Catharines Museum collection. And finally, attendees to the event can also enter to win the trip of a lifetime to the Yukon, with airfare, accommodations, dinners, and attractions, all part of this once-in-a-lifetime experience. This prize has been donated and coordinated with Travel Yukon and the City of St. Catharines in partnership. The main stage will have performances beginning at 5 p.m. and going right through to 9 p.m. This will be, again, outside the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. It will showcase some amazing local talent, as well as we're bringing in a headliner from the Yukon. A very huge thank you to the support of the Niagara Regional Native Centre for participation through the planning stages of this event. We are very excited to welcome headliner Diet and the Love Soldiers, who are coming to us direct from the Yukon. Diet and the Love Soldiers are Yukon's Canadian Folk Music Award-winning group and are an alternative country, folk roots, and traditional artist with catchy melodies and stories deeply rooted in Diet's Indigenous worldview and Northern life. Again, Diet and the Love Soldiers take the main stage at 7:45 p.m. With that, we wanted to be very quick to respect the time of council today. But thank you so much for allowing us to come and share some of the high-level information around this event. We're very excited to be hosting Golden Moments celebrating St. Catharines and the Yukon on this Thursday, August 11th from 5 to 9 p.m. We hope to see everyone downtown at our event. And if there are any questions from council, I'd be happy to take those at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Julia. Councillor Phillips.
As far as the athletes from the Yukon are concerned, will they be transported down to this?
So through Mr. Mayor to the councillor, there is an athlete shuttle that is being offered from Brock to downtown for the event, beginning at 6 p.m. and returning at 9 p.m.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was at the Lincoln last night, the very first 13 for 13 that they were partnered with Newfoundland, and the entire Newfoundland contingent showed up. It was pretty cool to see all the kids coming out, and so it was, yeah, it was great to see the smiles on their faces when they were coming through the Charles Daly Park. Pretty cool. All right. Thank you very much, Julia, for the presentation. Seeing no further questions, looking forward to seeing the 13th for 13 come to life here in downtown St. Catharines. Thank you to Julia and the Economic Development team for all the work that they put into this with the Canada Games crew. Need a motion just to receive. Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Garcia. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so now we're going to go to another presentation. This is the final one of the evening, and this is regarding the Fallen Firefighters Memorial Phase 2 update. And we'll have a presentation from the chair of the Fallen Firefighters Memorial Task Force, Barry Katzman, as well being joined by the fire chief, Dave Upper. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Katzman at this point in time. Welcome, Mr. Katzman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good evening to you and to council and everybody else. Thank you for the opportunity to give everybody an update on this important project. Just to refresh council and everyone's memory, I last presented before you, just before Christmas last year. And at that point in time, we had just completed the process of going through all the various bids and selecting the contractor. And that was just prior to the conclusion of last year. And so we started, I guess, at the beginning of this year to get active on the marketing materials, the communication materials, et cetera, and fundraising. So I think this, we have a couple of slides here that show again, some of the components of the park. I don't know if I can move that or not. Just the next slide, maybe. There we go. Oh, we got the whole deck here. You can skip through some of these things. There's a slide that shows just the, where the location is, and a quick refresher for everybody on that. Okay, so we can go back one maybe. Thank you. That's everybody I think knows the location at the corner of McGuire and Race Streets. That's what the layout will look like. We have made a change to this. It's not in the presentation materials. But our task force dealt with the fact that it would be ideal, if possible, to have firefighters memorialized on the statue portion that were both male and female. So we went back to the drawing board on that with the contractor, and we were able to come up with artist rendering for both a male and female firefighter. So it'll be a little bit of a departure from that. It'll be a much more impactful bronze statue. And I think that, when you see the artwork, it's not in the deck right now. It's going to be even more of an impactful piece than what we originally anticipated. So that's one major change. Maybe we can cycle through a couple more slides here. We can keep going here. Okay, so that's the location. And we met on site there about 2 weeks ago with the contractor. And you know what I'm going to do? I'll just, maybe we can get to that rate card. I'll just go through a quick update. So as everybody, I think, remembers, or at least I hope they do, with respect to the fundraising efforts here, we've been, the contractor's been excellent to work with, very adaptable with a lot of experience in this arena. In addition to that, we had some turnover at city staff. You might recall that we wanted to incorporate elements of culture in this, element of parks in this, et cetera, et cetera. So since that point in time, I would say the spring, through some assistance from CAO Oaks, Phil Christie, we've had Lori Membella as well from the city working on the fire, on the file in addition to the chief. And I see that in the report here, it shows our fundraising is currently at about $241,000. So we're actually in excess of that. Just by quick review, we have the major donors are it's the large wall. Again, I can't control the slide thing here. I could show it to you on here, which shows the large fundraising wall. We have 9 interested parties on that, 3 committed. That's a $50,000 donation. We also had excellent involvement from Stuart Green from the city, and we had added a bunch of tree elements. You'll see that in one of the slides there too. And we actually are selling the trees in addition to the bench sponsorships at $10,000 each. And then, of course, the bricks. And the bricks are $400 per. We're in excess of 75 of those being sold. We had a little bit of a challenge getting the website up and running, making it capable of taking in funds correctly. That's been solved. And we've just really started to get the word out. There is a rack card in here somewhere, in this deck here somewhere, which we have a group of retired firefighters led by a couple of guys that most of you know, I think, that are heading up selling the actual bricks themselves. And best way I can summarize this is when we've had a chance to get in front of corporate community people when we've had a chance to be at events such as the Mayor's Invitational Golf Tournament and the Big Brothers and Big Sisters Golf Tournament. We've had incredible response from the public. When people find out about this and they get a chance to be able to donate through the website or work with us on a customized sponsorship or donation, again, we've had great success. Our challenge, of course, is getting the word out there, making sure people know about this. And in many cases, especially in the large donation, we have to have 1, 2, or sometimes 3 meetings with the donor just to get to ensure that they're comfortable with the donation. So personally, for me, having done many of these fundraising initiatives over the years, I can honestly say that the response and the uptick we get from the corporate community and really the entire community has been excellent. We're extremely confident of getting this fundraising completed. In fact, with some administrative help, we'd probably be able to close it out quickly. It's just essentially a process. And in addition to that, the way that the presentation has evolved to include the 2 statues, to include the trees, I think it'll be even a better impact than we first anticipated. But also, it's given us the opportunity to increase some of the donor opportunities with the trees, etc., which is part of the reason why we chose to go with the dual statues. And we actually had firefighters from St. Catharines that the chief worked with, the chief selected to model for the statues so that the gear, signage, logos, etc., was authentic. So we wanted to come back and give everybody an update on where the project is at. And we will be breaking ground this fall on it. And we're all pretty enthusiastic about it. I don't know, Chief, if you would like to add anything to this or speak to the report directly, but I just wanted to conclude at least my comments by saying we've had incredible support from the city, frankly, all the way through. And that's it hasn't been easy with COVID and staff turnover, et cetera. But and this is also a project that touches many different departments, from communications to Parks and Rec, all the way through. And that's been a challenge as well. But people have really rallied around this. And as I said, once we are afforded the opportunity to get in front of the corporate community, our success rate has been excellent. There's the wall. There we have it. So I'll turn it over to you, Chief, if you'd like to add anything to that, and I can certainly take any questions.
Sure. Just a couple of things I'd like to add is just on Barry, what you were, or through Mr. Mayor and Council to you guys and girls. What the chair was saying is that this really is a team STC project that everyone has really rallied, and it's been great working together collectively. A couple of the challenges that we faced, I think, as the chairman was speaking to, is it's summertime and it's vacation, so trying to track down people for fundraising has been a bit of a challenge. I think once we come out of summertime and everyone's back from vacationing, things will be a little bit easier for us in trying to be able to meet with some of the folks that want to support the memorial. The other piece that we were very hopeful that we were going to be able to have the project begin probably late summer and try to get it done before the election happened. But unfortunately, as everybody knows with COVID, procuring some of the elements is going to be time consuming. We're hearing that certain pieces of the memorial you can't get for 6 months, 4 months, and so that's been a bit of a challenge as well. So I think those are some of the things that we're facing. But as for the fundraising, it's been going very well, and that as Chairman was saying, it's been well received, and so we're excited to continue to move the project into the next phase.
All right, thank you, Chief Upper, and thank you to Chair Katzman. In terms of the information, we will also circulate the information that was up on the screen, but we do have a question from Councillor Garcia, and then if there's any other questions from Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, very excellent update. Thank you very much. I was amazed that adding a second statue only added like 20% or so to the original cost. You did a great job there somehow.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Honestly, the contractor on this, I think I mentioned this once before. It's a family operation, and the husband is a platoon chief in Windsor. And they've done a number of these, and their expertise in this area and access to the people that do this kind of stuff has been, they're specialized in this area. So I think that frankly contributed to, because we withheld pulling the trigger on the second piece until we knew the cost figure. And we too, as a group, as a task force, were impressed with a relatively slight increase for something that we think is going to have a much higher impact. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you and all the best. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Councillor. Any other questions? And I just want to reiterate, Chair Katzman, you're well over 200. You're about 260,000 that has been raised privately so far.
That's correct, Mayor.
So again, the commitment was trying to do a private-public investment. That's a lot of hard work. And I know how much work, from the task force perspective, how much work you've put into this personally as well. What we're asking council and the members of the public is to get involved and find different ways that you can continue to either support or let other people know about this project. We do have it on our website under stcatharines.ca Fallen Firefighters, and they do have the rack cards. And I know Chair Katzman, you were pointing those out. We do have the rack cards, as well as information that is online about bricks that you can do. How many bricks? Do you know how many bricks you've already put out for people to take so far?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Actually, the bricks would be a great focus for the tail end of this, because the rack card speaks exclusively to the bricks. The higher level donation opportunities, we generally have to work directly with the corporate or private donor. But the bricks are somebody that everybody, every single councillor, every single staff person on here can spread the word about. And that's the idea behind the rack card. It's $400 per brick. There's 72 characters per. We've sold in excess of 75 of these with very little word of mouth. As you know, Mayor, 30 of those came at your tournament, I think. Yeah. Your charity tournament. So I would encourage every single person on this call, and hopefully some people that are listening, to get a hold of go on the website or get a hold of this rack. At a $400 per brick, there's 306 bricks. So I'm not sure what percentage that is, but we've probably sold about a quarter of them. And I strongly believe when people get a hold of it, it moves very quickly. So I trust that answered your question,
Yep.
Mayor.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Chair Katzman and Chief Upper. Thank you very much for the work that you're doing for this, and looking forward to the groundbreaking in the fall on this very important memorial that's long overdue in our community. Okay, motion to receive the presentation. Councillor McPherson, Councillor Phillips, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. We're going to move on now, and we do have the next one was 9.3, I believe we're on, which is the Engineering Facilities Environmental Services, P18164, and it's about dehumidification upgrades that are very much required because of some failures on the dehumidification of two of the pads at the Seymour-Hannah. It's an early budget approval. That's why it's here, but it is needed now today. So I'll turn it over to Director Martuccio for a quick brief on this, and then if there's any questions. Okay, so it's the Facilities and Engineering Manager, Paul Carfanini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to give you a little bit of background as to what happened, we have been planning since 2018 to replace the dehumidification system in Seymour-Hannah. Of course, the pandemic hit, and a lot of the work came to a halt, obviously. Then we had the vaccination clinic go in, which further delayed us, so we took on some other projects at the facility. Since then, we have two dehumidification units serving two ends of Seymour-Hannah. One of them has failed, and it cannot be repaired. So we had to We had to bring in some temporary dehumidification just in order to run our programming. We looked at the other dehumidification unit, and it is at end of life. I'm worried that we have another critical failure. So what we're asking for is early budget approval for a new dehumidification unit. And the reason that the request is coming at this meeting is because the lead time for the new equipment is 36 to 40 weeks. If we were to wait until 2023 after a capital budget has been approved, that would put us right into the heart of our user groups using Seymour-Hannah. If we get early budget approval, we can have this out to tender by September, which puts us in the summertime frame, which is our usual shutdown period, to have this installed at Seymour-Hannah.
Thanks, Mr. Carfanini. Any other questions of staff on this one? Councillor Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this. I guess, is this new technology? Because I didn't see this project in our conservation and demand management plan. I just don't see it here. But in relation to that, I'm just wondering if you look through the conservation and demand management plan and the list of projects, are there any other projects that we could tie in at the same time? Not to make this more complicated, but there was like a real, I don't know what it is, real CE technology. I think it had something to do with like taking bubbles out of water, not having to heat the water or something. I don't know. I'm sure it's maybe a different system, but I am interested in making sure that we get to projects in our conservation and demand plan. It's a 5-year plan, and we want to have some more achievements. So is that something that could be is in your work plan and could be added on here? Because that additional technology, at the time it had an $80,000 projected cost, but there was some significant savings in terms of greenhouse gas reductions. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, thank you. The technology that you were referring to was the Real Ice system. We have looked at it, and we're still debating whether the cost of investment is going to work with payback. However, the dehumidification system that's been designed ties directly into our conservation and demand management plan. There are significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions with the new technology that is being proposed to put on the dehumidification unit at Seymour-Hannah. I do not have those numbers in front of me. I was reviewing them today, but I don't have them in front of me to pass along. But I can say that there is it ties into our conservation and demand management plan, and the savings are significant.
Okay, thank you. For that reason, I fully support this. I think it makes a lot of sense to upgrade to the best possible system.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too strongly support the suggestion or the recommendation, and I'm impressed with how green the new system is going to be. My question is, as far as this system that we're replacing, is it normal to replace it? I think Seymour-Hannah has been open for about 18 years now. Is it normal for that system to go down this early?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we have been looking at that, and it is generally we would get 15 to 20 years out of the system, and we're at about 17, 18, so it falls well within the design constraints for longevity.
Right, thank you. And I think Councillor Harris will remember this. When Shiltus did the repair on the pipes, at one point they indicated that this system would be in need of repair in the near future. So it's not a real surprise. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question about how we finance these projects, do we reserve any funding for these expected, like I know in our asset management plan, do we reserve any funding for these known capital replacements? We might not know the exact year, but I'm sure we have the general time frame for them.
Director Douglas?
Thank you, through you, your worship, to the councillor. With regards to the city's assets, we don't hold a reserve for our capital assets at this time. That is something that we are looking to improve as we acquire and build new assets that we start to build. And that's another reason why the importance of completing our asset management plan, so that we do know our asset values and that we know how much money we should be putting aside into our reserves. Now, the city does have, as you know, our general reserve fund, but we don't have a specific reserve fund for these large capital assets at this time.
Okay, I just think hockey arenas makes a lot of sense. We charge a lot of user fees there. There's probably a good opportunity to start setting funds aside for these things. It's probably not dissimilar to the Port Dalhousie piers. We know at some point most of these arenas require significant upgrades. So certainly if that's being included in potential asset management plan, that's a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Carpenini. Is this a relatively specialized system that we're looking at? Is there just going to be a short list of vendors pre-qualified that are able to do this work, or is this more generic in nature?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we have a consultant. IB Story is a consultant to all the NHL teams, and they are currently doing the design on this system. It's not a specialty type of system. It's pretty straightforward through other facilities that have dehumidification on them. So it just needs to be designed for the facility for which it's going into.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Seeing no other further questions, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Phillips, Councillor Porter, and I'll look to the clerk to call the question.
Councillor Phillips?
Yes.
Councillor Porter?
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento?
Yes.
Councillor Williamson?
Yes.
Councillor Dodge?
Yes.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes.
Councillor Harris?
Yes.
Councillor Kushner?
Yes.
Councillor Littleton?
Yes.
Councillor McPherson?
Yes.
Councillor Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik?
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, 9.4, which is item 6.6, was moved from consent, and this is legal and clerk services. Policy for appointing elected officials and recommended elected officials for appointment. Councillor Garcia, you pulled this, so I'll turn it over the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a motion that, complementary motion, I believe, that I had submitted, which doesn't conflict with the original motion, but because it requires deferral, I don't know whether it's something that we can comment on, or so I'll defer to the clerk on that.
Yeah, I'll go to the clerk because I believe your motion is to not do anything regarding this until the next term of council, but I'll turn it over to the clerk because I think the report actually says the same thing.
So through the mayor, what the report does is it presents some options to council that council can consider adopting either today or in the future, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't recommend changing anything today. These are options that are already available to council. There's nothing that's in our procedures that prohibits us from doing this. There's nothing in our procedures that would require us to implement it today. It's just options that are there so that council's aware that this is something you could choose to start doing today or choose to start doing in 2 or 3 months or never. But they're there to let council know that they are available to them if they believe it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure that answered your question, which is I would like to make sure that we don't approve anything yet until the next council looks at this. So is that, do I need a motion for that, or do you feel that the report does that, Madam Clerk?
To the clerk.
So through the chair, the report is just for information. If council wanted to limit what it could do over the next few months, it could choose to do so. I generally think trying not to limit yourself is a good idea. You don't know what's going to come up over the next 2 months. But right now the report is just for information. So if there's nothing changes and the staff recommendation is approved, tomorrow, if we have to deal with an appointment at the next meeting, we would follow the same process unless council tells us otherwise.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, through you, it sounds like if you're right that I don't need to do anything. So if I can just speak to the report, then I would say that there are some interesting alternatives there, but in my opinion, what we have done so far has served us well, but I'm certainly willing to wait until we have a new council and let them look at this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff. So I requested this report, and I just want to thank staff. I think it's a really great report. And I don't think this report changes a whole lot in terms of what we do. The first alternative is asking for what could be a very brief statement of interest. So if you want to get appointed to the Hydro Board or the any board, what you write, what you choose to write, you don't have to write 500 words, but it becomes part of the public record. And I think it adds a level of transparency and accountability to our council appointments. So in terms of how we appoint each other and why, it's actually all written out. And if somebody asks you, why did you appoint so-and-so to this board? You can say, well, this is what they submitted. This is why I felt like they were the best candidate, because this was their vision for the Hydro Board, for example, or for the Library Board. And so I think that's something that's really important, because sometimes, you know, there could be the appearance that we're just excluding certain people or maybe appointing other people for reasons that are unclear. And this just, I don't think it's a lot of work to put a few words together to put in the public record to say why you want to be on a certain committee. So I would like to move that we actually have this as a policy, and that we, by default, do alternative 1. And if we felt like there was a reason to go to alternative 2, if there was a new, very important municipal board that we were setting up, and we felt like we needed to have a nominating committee because it was such a high-profile board, council would vote just by simple majority to go towards alternative 2. I think alternative 2 for all of our regular boards and committees is too much work and it's not worth it. But alternative 1, just a simple statement for the public record to that would be part of the council minutes. This is who wanted to be on these boards, and this was why. I think is fair and reasonable. I actually think doing this before the next council is important, so they don't have to think about it. Thank you.
So are you making an amendment, Councillor?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
What's your point of order?
Well, I submitted a different motion first, so my assumption was, based on what you said, that we weren't changing anything. This motion that we just heard about would change what we're doing now. So I would like my motion to be heard first.
So technically, let's see what the amendment is and what the impact is, and then I'll decide on whether or not which motion, if your motion would stand or if this motion will stand it as an amendment. Back to the floor, Councillor Porter.
Sure. I did pull the report. I didn't realize someone else had already pulled the report when I pulled it, but I didn't know who pulled it and why. So I guess I'd have to see. I don't really know what Councillor Garcia's motion is.
We're just focused on your amendment, so if you just...
Okay.
Who actually is the mover, Mr. Mayor? Was it Councillor Garcia that was the mover, or he just pulled it?
He just pulled it. He didn't move it yet. Okay, Councillor Miller is moving the motion, seconded by Councillor Sorrento. So at least it's on the floor. Councillor Porter, amendment?
Yes, so the amendment is that alternative 1, the preparation of a written statement of interest, be the default approach to council appointments. And that council could decide by a simple vote if they wanted to use the second alternative. That's another option. But this policy just lays out how that could be done, like a more fulsome appointment if we ever decided that was necessary.
Okay. Okay.
But it's this, my motion doesn't say, well, use alternative 2 for this committee or that committee. It's just really, there should be a default that we would, when we state our interest in sitting on a committee or board, to the clerk, that there's something written in, it becomes a matter of public record, so the public can see why or what our vision is for wanting to be on certain committees and boards.
Okay, that's understandable. So that's an amendment. Speaking to the amendment, Councillor Sorrento.
I was going to ask for a procedural explanation, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay. May I ask about the procedures? So I thought, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the clerk, that first of all, we'd have to put the staff recommendation on the floor, table it, and then vote, either vote to get it or not, or pass it or lose it. And then it would go to another amendment, or can we just add an amendment or friendly amendment?
Through the chair, council can amend a motion once it's put on the floor, but it can't be contrary to the motion.
Understood. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. And it's friendly, Councillor Miller?
I guess my question is to the clerk, do either of these amendments seem contrary to the motion?
To the clerk?
I wouldn't say that they are contrary. Councillor Garcia's motion is to defer consideration, which isn't contrary. It's just moving the time of the decision to a future point in time.
I mean, I'm happy to include them both in the motion, but I will request that we vote on those 2 amendments separately.
Okay, looks to the clerk as to the deferral, so that would be the last one. So we can vote on this one as now, Councillor Miller, are you friendly on this amendment? Yeah. Because then it makes up the motion. We don't have to vote on it. It just becomes to the clerk.
Typically, a motion to defer is decided on first.
Only if it's entered first.
The order of precedence in the procedure bylaw, a motion to defer or a motion to refer is considered prior to an amendment. The deferral would be of the motion as it's put on the floor, plus any amendments.
Okay.
Is Councillor Garcia's a deferral? I thought it was an amendment. I thought he was amending it to say we would not institute this policy until 2023. Correct. Not saying we're going to defer the decision on the policy as a whole until then. We decide on still, it just wouldn't be in effect till later.
To the clerk.
Through the chair, perhaps the councillor could confirm. However, the last email we have from him was that consideration of the report be deferred until the new term of council.
Councillor Garcia?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like my motion to defer to be addressed first, and it's just to defer consideration of this until the next term of council.
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Clarification, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. Earlier, the clerk said that Councillor Garcia's motion wouldn't really change the outcome of this, since it was just a motion to receive. So I'm a little confused here as to his is not really an amendment or a change to the original motion from my interpretation through the clerks, what the clerk said.
So there's no.
So I mean, if we voted for neither of the amendments and just vote for the staff recommendation, that essentially puts it over to the next council.
Correct. To the clerk.
So through the chair, the report the staff recommendation was just for information. So approving the staff recommendation, no changes. That's what Councillor Miller has put on the floor. Councillor Porter has requested an amendment, which would create alternative 1 as the default process. Councillor Garcia has requested that the decision be deferred. Perhaps best not to think of Councillor Garcia's as an amendment. It's a motion to defer.
As a subsequent to that, Councillor Garcia did make correspondence today that he'd like to speak last. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
So, Councillor Garcia, did you make that request today to speak last?
Well,
I've got it in writing.
Can I just interrupt our point of order? Obviously, we have to deal with the deferral first.
sorry, I'm
willing
had
to-
a call from the city cell phone there while I was unmuted.
If we have,
Yeah, I just thought that my deferral could come in last, but I mean, I don't need to speak to it. I just would like to defer the decision.
So that's what we were doing
But that-
today. If you wanted to speak last, then you can defer it. But you wanted to speak first and defer it. So you sent mixed messages, Councillor.
Okay, my message is I would like to defer it to the next.
Okay. Okay.
so according to the clerk, we got to deal with that first. The deferral, correct?
That is correct. Motion defer has higher precedent than a motion to amend or a main motion.
Okay, just I'll clarify is that the councillor did request to speak last, so that's why the amendment was coming to the floor, because the councillor did indicate he would like to speak last in case there was amendments that were coming to the floor. So Councillor Garcia, when you put your hand up first and you want to speak to something first, then you cannot defer, because under our procedural bylaws, if you speak to a motion, you cannot make a deferral on an motion. And Councillor Garcia, you spoke to the motion, so you're not making a deferral. That is my judgment. So another councillor can make a deferral. Councillor Miller's moved the motion. Councillor Sorrento has seconded it. We have an amendment on the floor. Someone else can defer the motion now. So the hands up that we have is we have Councillor Harris who would like to make a comment.
I'll defer and see what happens.
Okay, so everything will be deferred, including the alternative that has been put on the floor. That amendment will be included as a deferral. So now we have the complete motion that will be deferred to some future council who will look at this and scratch their head and go, interesting that you discussed this. Nope. 500 words or less, that's all we're asking about. Okay, so motion to defer, show of hands on this one. Motion to defer, that's what the one is on the floor right now. All right, opposed? Okay, let's have a recorded vote. Recorded vote on this one.
Councillor Harris. The motion to defer.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
No.
Councillor McPherson.
No.
Councillor Miller.
No.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
No.
Councillor Sorrento.
No.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Mayor Senzik.
No.
And that's lost on a tie, not deferred.
Okay, so now we have the alternative one as the amendment, and that's on the floor. Councillor Littleton, you haven't spoken. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's interesting because this won't affect me, so I'm happy to put it on to second or to approve it. I think what's really interesting is that Councillor Porter has talked about the reason why she asked for this in the first place was to try to make something more transparent, was to try to make something more explicable to the general public if they wanted to ask questions. And a lot of people who talk about transparency and, you know, the taxpayer and standing up for democracy and all, are people that seem like they don't want to write 500 words to say why you want to sit on a board. I just don't even understand why why we would not even accept this. You're not being asked to write a PowerPoint presentation and do little memes and all the rest of it. You're being asked to write 500 words maximum for why you think you have the skill sets and you have the ability to represent this council on certain boards. I don't understand why this is even, we're discussing it. We should all have been saying, you know what, that's a really good move. Thank you to the clerk for doing a really good job on this report. Let's put that into place. I don't know what the problem is. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. I think what we're forgetting here too is some people who might have been around council for quite a long time assume that people might know of them or know their skill sets. I'm thinking about the brand new people who are coming on council and wanting to get onto boards. And quite frankly, as soon as someone sits at this table, they are equal to everybody on this table. So everybody should have an equal opportunity to getting on boards. And I know in the past, I can't go there. But there is sometimes, I think, people that think they ought to be on certain boards and committees. And I'd like to see shakeups. I'd like to see new ideas. I'd like to see other people. I'd like to see the person that comes after me get on a board or a commission because he or she wants to sit on that board or commission, not because they know people or they've been around or they've done that for a bunch of times. Having this at least gives every new person that sits at this table an opportunity to get on boards. So that's why I'm going to support this for Councillor Porter. And I think we all should really just support this. We're asking for 1 page. It takes you 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton. We do have hands that are still up, and on Councillor Harris, do you still want to speak, or?
I just want to know, it doesn't have to be double spaced. I'm just kidding. I don't need to speak.
Councillor Kushner, you got your hand up still?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll certainly support it, but I'd like to comment on previous occasions. We've asked members of council, why do you want to be on that board? And if people have questions or if they want to make a statement as to why they want to be on a board, they've always been welcome to do it. But at the same time, I certainly support this, and I don't see this really at odds with what we've done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Phillips?
Just a simple question. Does this include committees also? If I want to be on the Social Sustainability Committee, am I going to have to go that way, or is it just for boards and commissions?
Yeah, I think in the report it does separate. I'll turn over.
I just wanted to, I agree with what you said. I think I saw that, but I wanted to make sure.
So through the chair, the way we would interpret how it's written right now would include advisory committees and task forces. So if council wanted to scope it to boards and commissions, then that would be things like the Public Library Board, the Airport Board, Transit, Hydro. And would it include, we don't, councilors are very rarely on advisory committees, it's just the social committees.
My concern about this is that, for instance, if I wanted to be on the Social Sustainability Committee, which I'm on now, and I'm voted off, well then, I have to write another one to get on the Culture Committee, and I could be writing a lot, for example, and I don't know who's going to decide, what board I get on or committee I get on. I can see, I'll use this, the symphony or the grape wine, which I'm also on. But to get on committees, that's going to be a lot of work for people, I think.
Councillor Porter, that's a good question. Councillor Phillips?
It is a good question. I am happy to scope it to boards and commissions and then leave it to council if they feel like they want to do it for a committee. It could be a simple majority vote if they wanted to ask for a statement of interest. But I think that's fair because we are part-time councillors, and that's, it could become a lot. So that's reasonable.
So agency boards and committee, agency boards and
yes.
ABCs?
Agencies and boards would be clear to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, friendly amendment. Hey, thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Williamson, you got your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I think it's important that we not lose sight of the staff recommendation, which left open the flexibility of either option going forward. And I don't see the issue of transparency here really being relevant, suggesting that the next council may be less transparent and more transparent, who's to say. And I think the staff recommendation actually has the most validity, so that's why I will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. There's a lot of people throw transparency around a lot, and it's funny how it gets thrown around. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, I think there's a point to be made that we do often advocate for ourselves around the council chamber when we're voting on these things, but I think we should keep in mind that most people do not watch city council. It might come as a surprise to some people. So it might be good to have a public record in writing of these things. I think that's really valuable. Just as we're in a campaign season, it's good to have politicians be on record so you can hold them to account for certain things. So I think that's valuable. In terms of the timing, I think if we think this is the right move to make, then we should make it. I don't see how it's dissimilar to voting on future council's wages, which we did a few months ago and felt comfortable doing ourselves, even though it didn't impact us. So I certainly don't see any issue with doing it now if we believe it is the right thing to do, which I'm certainly in support of.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Seeing no other further comments, I think Councillor Kushner, your hand's up from the previous one, so I think we can go to the call the question.
Mr. Mayor, some clarification, please.
Yeah, Councillor Garcia, clarification.
Yeah, are we voting on just the staff recommendation first without the amendment, or?
No, we're voting on all of them because the amendment has been friendly from the mover and the seconder.
Okay, can I ask that it be split, please?
Yeah, we can split it. Any councillor can request a split. So we'll have the split, and we'll do the first one, which is that alternative one be default. So that'll be the first vote.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
No.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
No.
Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right. So the second portion of that, which is the motion in its first part.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor McWilliamson. Sorry.
Yes. Son of William.
Thank
Son
you.
of.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Mayor McSenzik.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
That's carried.
All right. So that's carried. We're all done on that motion, right? All good. Okay. 6.7, which is planning and building services, and this was lifted by Councillor Littleton. I'll go to Councillor Littleton for the reason for the lifting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we bring up the amendment? I had asked for this report.
You're moving this?
Yes.
Seconded. This one needs a seconder. Councillor McPherson. Pull the motion up, please. Sorry.
Okay, I had asked for this report about the street naming process, but in the report, and thanks to staff for all the work, because they certainly did a lot of work on this. So in this report, they've created a policy about street naming for future public and private streets in the city. But I was more concerned with renaming of streets. So what I've just added here is that future street renaming requests be considered in accordance with the park renaming policy. Thank you.
All right. Any questions on this one? Simple amendment. Okay, seeing none, call the question to the clerk.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, this next one is just it's a property file, but it's just an adjustment that I'm looking to get council support for. So this is to a Hainer, and it's working with the region. The region needs access to the property, looking to purchase it because it's part of their pumping station. It's right next door. It's at the bottom of Hainer. If I could just have the map being pulled up. The map there, and so for council's consideration, is the northern part, which is the square part near the bottom. We're asking for that to be squared off to be declared surplus so that the pumping station right next door is the access point and the usage by the region. The other triangular space that has more of an impact on the Hainer Street property. You see those properties where you've got that blue property line. There needs to be some further discussion with the city about the property in question. So instead of transferring all of it to the region, it's just the bottom portion that'll be squared off, and then the city will retain the rest, which is also green space. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the intent right now is just to give it to them?
Sell it. It's a surplus.
Okay. Is there any consideration possibly, there's a piece of land at Sunset Beach on the east end that the region owns that we've been negotiating with them to try to expand the parking lot a little bit. It's just scrub brush there. Is there any thought about the possibility of trading with them?
Go to Sea Oaks for how we could do this.
Through Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't suggest that we do that with this file and that. We have been in discussions with the region, and there's other needs for the Sunset Beach, and the discussion is still happening. I don't think a trade at this point would make any.
Okay, as long as that discussion continues.
It is.
Yes. Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be pleased to move it if you don't have a mover.
Okay, Councillor Sorrento, seconded by Councillor Miller. Thank you.
I'll just speak
Councillor Kushner, you got your hand up?
Mayor, I'll just speak to it very quickly. I think this is
Let me go with Councillor Kushner, I'll come back to you. Councillor Kushner, you're up.
Second. Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Do you have something to say here? Oh, you want to second it? You can second it. Councillor Kushner is seconding it. It's got the thumbs up from Councillor Miller. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just another great example of how the two orders of government are working together, the city with the region, and I think that's a wonderful thing. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Okay, I'll turn it over to the clerk for the vote.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Harris. We'll move on. Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so.
Sorry, point of order. Do these necessarily have to go to the surplus land task force now? Is it possible to? I can't imagine that task force can have a specific.
Through the chair, no, this did not go to that task force. To the best of my knowledge, I would have been at the meeting.
think it would-
but it went to the staff. There's a staff committee that reviews all dispositions and acquisitions as well. But this is so small, we didn't send it to the surplus lands task force.
I just thought typically after we declared it surplus, does it have to go? I just have to, because we can obviously skip that. I think on this one, it's just.
Through the chair, based on the motion that council just approved, we would go right to sale.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Okay, if there's calls for notices of motion, the next meeting is August 29th, so get those in advance. We do have the minutes of the task force that are in front of us, and they're from the advisory task force, so I do need a mover and a seconder for those. Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor McPherson, and all in favor? Show of hands, it's perfect, it was carried. And then we have an amendment to the terms of reference for the Fallen Firefighters Memorial Task Force. And the amendment is to include 3 representatives from the Fire Services Leadership Team. So it's just an expansion of the voting on that task force. Councillor Phillips is making the motion, seconded by Councillor Garcia. And all in favor? And that's carried as well. There's no closed session today. Before we get to the bylaws, I just, in relation to the item that was discussed previously, if Councillor Harris is on the, he had asked for, under other business, what further steps could be taken. I don't know if Councillor Harris is still on here. Councillor Kushner, you're his ward colleague, so I don't know if you were knowing what he wanted to talk about.
Well, we want to talk about the appealing the decision of the Committee of Adjustment.
Okay.
And when would that be discussed, Mr. Mayor?
So that's where we are right now, because we're going to go bylaws and then we're going to adjourn the meeting. So I just wanted to keep that open for a discussion. So we got Director Kitse, who's just come on screen, and Manager Josiopovic. So I'll turn it over to Director Kitse, and maybe she can provide some further guidance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Through the mayor to council, at their meeting of Wednesday, July 27, the Committee of Adjustment was considering a minor variance application for 234A and 234B Vansickle Road, whereas the applicants were seeking relief from the zoning bylaw to accommodate an accessory dwelling unit inside a proposed semi-detached dwelling. While this is a permitted use in that area, what the variance was for was to seek relief from the parking provisions. So the zoning bylaw currently requires 1 parking spot per dwelling unit and 1 parking spot per accessory dwelling unit. For the proposal as it's currently configured, only 1 parking spot per primary unit was able to be accommodated. So the application was to seek 0 parking spaces for the accessory dwelling units. Staff reviewed the application and determined that it did not meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act and recommended its denial. The Committee of Adjustment agreed with the applicant and ultimately granted the variances. We're currently in the appeal period, which expires on August 16th. Which I understand is why Councillors Kushner and Harris are bringing forward the request for council to provide staff with direction to appeal the decision of the Committee of Adjustment to the Ontario Land Tribunal.
Okay, Councillor Kushner, do you have... Okay.
Well, I did have the motion, Mr. Mayor, which I did send in. Would it be appropriate to read that now?
So, Councillor, I was just conferring with our city clerk. The only way that this can come back onto the table and have a discussion even of this council is if there would be to a reconsideration. And the only way we can have reconsideration is the person who is on the prevailing side would entertain that motion, which would be Councillor Sorrento.
Can I just speak to it very quickly?
You can't speak to it very long. I'll give you 15 seconds.
Everybody else gets 2 minutes.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Okay. This really is against my better judgment. However, in light of just hearing what people have to say, I will go against my own principles and allow the argument to be heard, even though I really don't want to do it, but I will do it for the greater good. So, yes.
So you'll make the motion?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Mayor, for reconsideration.
Motion to reconsider?
Yes.
Motion to reconsider, seconded by Councillor Phillips. Okay, that's the only way that the discussion is going to happen again. So we have to, motion to reconsider is 2/3. So we need 2/3 to reconsider this motion to suspend the rules. Okay. All in favor of the reconsideration, show of hands. Okay, so that's more than 2/3. Okay. Now the motion on the floor is to waive the rules, to allow the motion, and it has to be unanimous. Councillor Phillips is moving that motion. Councillor Sorrento is going to second it. Now we have to have a recorded vote because it needs to be unanimous.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor McPherson.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dutch.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that motion to suspend the rules has carried.
Okay, so we've figured that out, and now the motion will come on the floor. Thank you, Councillor Sorrento, for allowing this to come onto the floor. Councillor Kushner, I'm going to turn the floor over quickly to you to explain, and again, we heard from Director Kitse, we understand the importance of why we're in this period of potential appeal. And Councillor Kushner, I'll turn it over to you for clarification of the importance of this in your ward.
I'll second it, Bill.
Yeah, it should be by Harris and seconded by myself. Thank you.
Outrageous.
Okay, we've got that clarified. Any other clarification?
Now, shall I read the recommendation or?
No, the recommendation's in front of us. Just explain it, Councillor Kushner, as to why it's important that it's in front of us today, from your opinion.
Okay. It's important, Mr. Mayor, because our bylaws are here for a purpose. And as the council, we tend to be very strong proponents of infillings, but they have to be done properly. And in this case, this individual had severances to allow 2 units, and then he is coming back, which I thought was the correct decision. And now he is coming back because he wants to put in 2 accessory buildings. And the requirement is very clear, 1 space per unit. And the Committee of Adjustment, on a divided vote 3-2, decided to accept his request, which was contrary to the recommendation by the Planning Department, which was to deny the request. And the neighbors have been extremely upset. They cannot see the logic of a Committee of Adjustment going against the recommendation of the Planning Department with respect to the parking requirements. And if this goes through, then that means it could be open season for other developers in the community, in other parts of the city, to come for accessory units and ask that the parking requirement be waived from 1 to 0. And that's why it's extremely important for us to direct staff to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Harris, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right, any other further questions? Councillor Littleton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Director of Planning and Building Services. So we are appealing this because, or sorry, staff wants to appeal this because we want to have parking. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to the councillor, every minor variance application in front of the Committee of Adjustment is looked at on its own merits, within its own context, and against the 4 tests under the Planning Act. So planning staff have undertaken that analysis, including a site visit and a review of our policies and the 4 tests, and agreed that this application could not be supported for the reasons that are in the report. That recommendation was overturned by the Committee of Adjustment, who, to a 3-2 vote, agreed with the applicant and granted the variances. There is a 20-day appeal period, which we're currently in, and Councillor Kushner and Councillor Harris are seeking permission of all of Council to direct staff to appeal the Committee of Adjustment's decision. So the motion in front of Council this evening is coming from the ward councillors and not from staff.
Okay, so, but staff wants to appeal this.
The councillors are seeking permission to direct staff to appeal this. This motion is not coming from staff directly. Staff did recommend denial of the application.
Okay, so they want to, let me understand this, because this report isn't obviously before, I haven't had a chance to read it. Obviously, we walked this on, which we voted to do so. I'm looking at the Google Maps. So this house, they want to put another dwelling here and with no extra parking. Have I got it?
I have on my screen a visual aid that may be helpful if one of the clerk's departments would like to grant me access. Okay, never mind, it's on the screen. So through the mayor to council, what you see before you right now is an illustration of the proposal. So in the dark lines towards the top of the screen, you see a semi-detached unit. with one parking space allocated for each unit. However, the proposal is to add accessory dwelling units to each of the semi-detached, which would mean they would need to provide 2 parking spaces per unit. With the design of the dwellings and the staircase and the distance to the front lot line, they're unable to do that, so they have sought variances from the committee. Staff did not support those variances given the context of the neighborhood and the 4 tests.
Where are the accessory dwellings supposed to go?
Through the mayor to the councillor, my understanding is they'd be in the lower level of the semi-detached units. So basement apartments.
Okay, so my only comment on this is that how do we know the people living in the accessory dwellings are going to have vehicles? We need housing. I'm just wondering, you know, we're starting to talk about no parking minimums. I mean, no, not this count. I know it's really out there, but you know, this is a movement that's happening in cities across the country. So if I understand what staff is saying, but does this mean then that we don't get 3 more dwellings for people to live in if we worry about 3 cars?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the city's Garden City official plan provides policy guidance on when we should be considering parking reductions, particularly outside of the urban growth center or the major transit station areas. The 4 tests of the Planning Act, the first one includes, does the application meet the intent of the official plan? If a minor variance application fails on any one of the 4 tests, then the entire application on itself fails. The Committee of Adjustment can always make a decision that is alternative to that of the staff recommendation, as is their purview. And in this case, the ward councillors are seeking to appeal that to the tribunal.
So I appreciate that. And I guess my concern would be every time a Committee of Adjustment application goes not the way the ward councillor, not these 2 ward councillors, but in general, a ward councillor doesn't go the way that perhaps some of the neighbors want it to go or what have you, are we going to be in the same situation that it's coming to council and the ward councillors are putting for motions to appeal it? Why is this unique, I guess?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that may be an inquiry best directed at the ward councillors. In this term of council, this is the only application that I'm aware of that we have come to that has come to council seeking direction to ask staff to appeal to the tribunal. So this is the only one I'm aware of in the last 3.5 years. But the rationale behind this request would have to be directed towards the ward councillors.
Councillor Kushner?
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation this evening is to support the decision of the planning department, to support our bylaws. And if we want intensification, we have to have good guidelines. And I've never made a suggestion to appeal before, but the only reason for this appeal is to support the recommendation of the planning department.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Littleton, we got a bit of a speakers list going, so I want to make sure that we're going to move on. Councillor Littleton?
And respectfully, I mean, we don't, as councillors, just rubber stamp planning department. So we constantly have councillors that don't go with planning department recommendations in front of ourselves. So I don't know. I'll listen to the rest of the speakers. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Porter, you're up, and then Councillor McPherson, then Councillor Miller, then Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be supporting this because this flies in the face of a climate emergency. And we make assumptions, you know, the people who have cars, including me, and I was guilty of this for a long time in my life, we make assumptions that everybody else has a car, can afford a car, wants a car, needs a car. And when you plan cities for cars, you end up with what we have now, which is a climate crisis and maybe 50 to 60 years of, you know, a healthy life for our kids. So this is a prime example of, this would be a massive waste of resources to go and appeal this. I know people get upset about parking, but like, tell me where the crisis is on Vansickle Road over here near Strata. For doing this, you can take the bus. It's near Rykert. I think the bus goes down Rykert Street. This would be a great location for anybody to live and get on the bus. So no, I do not support this. I don't want to get involved in the Committee of Adjustment and their work. I'm sure I'd like to keep that completely separate. I don't like to have Committee of Adjustment decisions get appealed to me, because it has nothing to do with me, and I think it's very important that we draw the line. And to me, this isn't a good enough reason. I'm sure there might be a time when we might have to consider something, but not for this, not to create more space for cars when we've declared a climate emergency. I honestly find it outrageous that we have declared this and then we're having this conversation again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be supporting this. As a former member of the Committee of Adjustment, I do recall the 4 tests quite clearly, and I'm trusting the committee because they are well trained, well thought, well experienced. Again, I think there have been times when the committee has, and myself included, have gone against, we voted against the staff recommendation on various applications. I don't think that this is one of those situations where, I mean, as I can see, there are bus stops rather close, and there is the assumption that not everyone does have a car. I'm very uncomfortable, as Councillor Porter said, getting involved in decisions like this that the Committee of Adjustments has made. They know what they're doing. I just think it's an inappropriate interference.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, I think Miller, and then Sorrento. Councillor Miller.
Yeah, I guess maybe Councillor McPherson just answered this. I was going to ask how often this happens that the COA would go vote against. I mean, not an exact number, but a staff recommendation. Is that a fairly regular occurrence, or is that a rare occurrence?
Director Kitte?
Maybe I'll take that one through the mayor.
Yeah.
It's rare, but it does happen. I would say once every couple months.
Okay. I would just note that Vansickle Road, which I'm on pretty frequently, my kids play soccer over there, is a pretty wide road and pretty liable to high speeds. And frankly, cars parking on the road is one of our only ways to mitigate high speeds right now. So even the worst case scenario, that people living in these ADUs will have cars, which apparently is the worst case scenario. There's some residual benefit there. I think it is good that we keep the Committee of Adjustment separate from council. There's a good reason for that. So I'm not really comfortable. There's lots of times I've been frustrated by votes at the Committee of Adjustment, but I understand the system works. And I think to Councillor Kushner's point, I think the open season would be if we start appealing decisions of COA, we're going to get requests like this all the time. From residents, and I think that's why we depoliticize these things. It's one of our only protections against things like NIMBYism. So I'm not in support of appealing this, and I will note, as has been noted, that this is a popular area for transit routes. It's relatively close to downtown in the 4th Avenue area, so there's lots of alternative transportation options. For better or worse, we've sort of sprawled the city out, and if we do that, we need to make sure people have active transportation options, and this area is really part of the pretty close to the urban core nowadays that we've moved the city so far west. So I won't be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the same reasons my colleague stated, I'm not going to be supporting it either. My understanding, Mr. Mayor, is that it is in the act that councillors are not supposed to get involved in the Committee of Adjustment decisions. However the wording is, it's still coming to us. It's still a complaint about the committee. The committee is at arm's length. I don't know if it's $10,000 a day, Mr. Mayor, to go and litigate. I don't know how long it would take. But my biggest fear is that the committee has already made its decision, and the applicant would likely win, and I don't even know what it would cost the city, so I cannot support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Sorrento. Any further comments? Just a quick question. I don't know if Director Kitay can answer this. That Vansickle Road is being examined for bike lanes, and the impact of parking on the street. What impact would it have on introducing bike lanes on Vansickle? Because that was a direction of council for the capital budget for between highway, so St. Paul Street West and up to Reichert. There was an examination for bike lanes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the inclusion of bike lanes would be problematic for on-street parking in that area, and it's a personal principle that the bike lane should be held to a higher principle than on-street parking.
Okay. All right. That's for clarification, and I'll look to the clerk to call the vote.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
No.
Councillor McPherson.
No.
Councillor Miller.
No.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
No.
Councillor Sorrento.
No.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
And Mayor Senzik.
No.
And that loses on a tie.
Did we win?
All right, so we'll now go to the bylaws, and there is an amendment to the bylaws, so we need to go through this one. It's a motion of bylaws listed on council agenda A through N, be read a first time considered and passed. They be signed and executed by the mayor. There is an amendment from Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller, I'm going to turn it over to you for Herrick.
Yeah, so you can talk about Herrick for a long time.
Nope. Just
so I won't. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. That's what I was alluding to, or that was my preamble. That we are making an adjustment to facilitate construction on Woodburn and Herrick. That requires removing some on-street parking to provide access for the site. We are the four or five townhouses that will be directly potentially impacted by this that don't have street parking. We'll have to get parking permits. We always had to charge for parking permits. So what I'm asking is that we waive those fees, as those permits will only be used by the homeowners who are already being negatively affected.
Okay, so this is largely housekeeping for a period of time, 2022, 2023.
Yes.
And then it'll be revisited after the 2023 period once construction is complete. So Councillor Miller, you're moving the bylaw, seconded by Councillor Littleton. And all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay. And now we go to the adjournment. Motion to adjourn this meeting. Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor McPherson. And hope everyone has a wonderful 2 weeks of the Canada Summer Games. And all in favor? And that's carried. Meeting is closed. Thank you very much, Council, for all your attention to all the matters in front of us. Take care.